the exercise of the non-qualified option.
And then there's another incentive stock, it looks like, that you write about. It's called restricted stock, where you receive it in return for a performance, thing, and you're actually not even paying for that stock. Talk about that and the tax treatment there.
Sure, and I would just say that as we start to get more sophisticated and cover restricted stock, and in the Forbes article that we'll link to, you'll see I refer to Section 83, which is the Internal Revenue Code provision that governs so-called restricted stock. These are basically performance-based criteria, and usually they're keyed to longevity of employment. So something like, I'm giving you 100 shares of stock in my company, provided that you stay here for the next 5 years. There are a couple of different sets of rules that apply, and as you say, Scott, in many cases you're not separately paying. I guess separately is a key, because the Internal Revenue Service views, I think correctly, this as the consideration that you're giving is your continued employment. You're continuing to provide services, and in effect, you're being paid a type of compensation, which is this restricted stock. Generally, the tax rules under this Code Section 83 say we don't tax it until we know if you're really getting it. So you got to wait the 5 years in my example. So you wait until the vesting occurs, and then we tax it. There are, as I briefly mentioned, just to complicate things a little further, there are ways you can elect earlier tax treatment, which sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes that can be advantageous.
So in this particular case, it actually gives you some flexibility as to when you're taxed.
That's right, and actually I use a couple of examples in the Forbes article, and believe it or not, the IRS website is pretty helpful. If you go to irs.gov and type in Section 83 or restricted stock, you can look at some guidance they have, IRS publications, for example, that also give you ideas about how to use this kind of elective procedure to your advantage. The key is, obviously, you want to do it right, and there are some timing restrictions, generally speaking, if you're going to elect an earlier tax treatment, which, as you say, Scott, can be advantageous. You generally have to do it within 30 days of your original award of the grant.
As we close in on our ending of time here, one thing at the end here that you talk about, I also want to clarify too that even though both kinds of options seem to be fairly easy to understand, a lot of times people are given all three or combinations of some, and it's just always a good idea just to get some tax help. But you talk about 409A, and that's really a good example of when you need to see somebody.
Yeah, it is, and I think we've talked about, at least briefly, about Section 409A in other contexts. One, I guess, notable thing that plaintiffs' lawyers are very happy about, or should be very happy about, is that Section 409A does not apply to attorney's fee structures. There was early concern by the various trade groups, NASTA, National Structured Settlements Trade Association, for example, that attorney's fee structures were going to be outlawed because of Section 409A, and the IRS quickly said, to NASTA's credit, quickly said no, that wasn't the case. So, but you're right, Section 409A is one of those kind of quicksand provisions, and it can apply to various types of deferred compensation. On the whole, though, I mean, although I'm afraid there's no easy way to say these rules, on the whole, the stock option rules are not that complicated, but they're pretty unforgiving, and you don't want to later wake up and find out that you made a mistake that usually can't be corrected.
Rob Wood is the host of the Tax Law Channel. You can also find him at Wood and Porter in San Francisco. WoodPorter.com is a great place to find all of his writings, and there are many, as well as here at the Legal Broadcast Network. Rob, I appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thanks again for having me, Scott.
This has been a service of ATG Trust. I'm Scott Drake, and you're watching the Legal Broadcast Network. All right. We tried trying to get under the 10-minute wire because YouTube has